Well, maize futures hit new peaks this week as drought concerns intensify, and there's a double, maybe even a triple whammy for South Africa as the rand sinks to new lows against the US dollar. The price of maize hitting a 21-month high, and of course maize absolutely pivotal in the South African food chain. Many people consume maize in various forms, either as samp or as mini meal, as a staple, and of course also in the production of protein. A lot of maize is put through chickens and cattle through the feedlot system as well. This is the Moneymakers. I'm Bruce Whitfield. I'm joined by Chris Sturgess, who's head of the JSE Commodity Derivatives division, to help us understand runaway futures prices when it comes to maize. You fly into Joburg and it's 50 shades of beige over the Free State and over Northwest. It is devastating what El Nino is doing to crop production.
Spot on. I think, Bruce, if you look at clearly when it comes to grain crops, rain makes grain, as we've said before, and without rain, it's tough times out there, particularly in the Free State and parts of the Northwest, which are major growing areas for white and yellow maize.
Now, 2015 was a drought year. Maize production was substantially down in the last harvest season. Just how bad was it?
So remember, we came off a really good year of just over 14.5 million tons.
But we had about 4 or 5 really good years, almost record after record after record up until about 2013, right?
And 2013, 2014, we got to about 10 and a bit million tons, which has allowed us some carryover stock. But now obviously the market, and that's coming through the futures market, the market is super sensitive around carryover stock levels through until March, April. And then obviously what exactly are we going to do with the July harvest, where we generally get good crops? And the market is very nervous, and you know, what is that going to be? Is it going to be 6 million tons, 8 million tons?
What are plantings looking like? I mean, because this is the time where the planters should be in the lands. We should have had the plows going in and turning over the gorgeous clay soil and preparing the lands for planting. And I don't see any evidence as I fly over these areas of much activity.
So a large part of Mpumalanga, although they were late, managed to get the crop in.
As they had any rain to help germinate the seed.
Follow-up rains have been there, they're there. Now, I guess where those guys who are irrigating, that's where the big risk is, because they don't have much surplus or stock in the dams to be able to irrigate further. So they need follow-up rains. I think if you're, again, flying over the Free State, I saw some tweets coming through that the Bethlehem, there was a dust bowl and you could see the planters are starting to gain. But again, that is, you know, now we're starting to push later and later in the season. And although, you know, through genetically modified maize, we've been able to improve cultivars, we can start planting later, but there's a cutoff point. Why? Because we're trying to defend that next frost season. And if we plant too late, the crop gets damaged. So you can see for Mpumalanga, we've gone way past the planting season, but for the Northwest,
the crops are in.
It's good.
And what we need is also, when they get to 2 or 3 foot high, they start becoming vulnerable to drought again.
Exactly.
And if you don't get those follow-up rains, they start falling over.
And that's, again, coming through the market. The market is super nervous around, are we going to get enough crop in Northwest and Free State to be able to pull us through? And then it always is the January, February follow-up rains going to come through? So it's a nervous times out there.
Absolutely. So we've seen the planters going in Bethlehem in the Free State. I mean, farmers are, that's why so many farmers go to church, because they have a kind of faith that people in markets perhaps don't. So maybe need to have that kind of faith in markets too. But the futures market is pricing in something of a crop calamity for 2016.
And particularly on white maize. Why is white maize versus yellow maize? And you spoke about the numbers and a lot of yellow maize going into the feed sector. We're able to import yellow maize so much easier. And already, if you
there's lots of it, and it comes from places like Brazil, where the yields are great.
and Argentina and Paraguay have even, you know, we've got supplies from there over 200,000 tons thus far. But on white, that's where the tricky one is. Are the Mexicans going to allow us to use some of their stock? And that's where some of the tons, only 50,000 tons have imported so far. In Zambia, we've seen I think the number was 17,000 tons come in so far. But now the question is, what about next season? Yes, we might have less yellow maize by March, but we're able to import. So there you can see the big difference of around 500 Rand per ton between white and yellow maize. But for July next year, that gets a lot closer again. Unfortunately, what drives the higher prices is also the way the dollar rand exchange rate's going, and that doesn't help local prices.
Just give me a sense of what the futures market has been doing for the last 6 months, what sort of increases we've seen.
So again, if you look at that volatility, we came off prices of around 3,200, 3,300 for a long time of the market. And
white maize per ton.
Per ton. And now we've jumped to 3,765. Which is not the highest all-time high. We've seen around 3,770, 380. Call it.
We're close.
Very close. Very, very close. And that's kind of been the move. So for a long time, the market's been pricing around just over 3,000. Seeing, are we going to get the rain? Is there going to be enough planted? And that's where now we're just seeing the run, but also compounded by the rand devaluing.
Yeah. Well, what is going to be the game changer? I mean, we don't have any sort of sensible forecast of any real rain coming through. We usually get our rains, don't we, coming from the equatorial parts of the DRC, and we get those big tropical storms that move down over Angola, over Namibia, and into the grain producing areas and back up again across Mozambique. That hasn't been coming.
You know, it comes down to, I think you mentioned that faith element. And, you know, miracles happen. You know, we could see on Friday, the rain reports were out there, and guess what? The market was trading limit down. And Monday, guess what?
Trading limit down?
So in the grains market, we have a maximum that the market can move, either 80 Rand or 120 Rand. And that's just to calm things down. Because, again, we're trading 3 hours a day, allow the market to assess the position. And so Friday, we were
trading. There was
trading.
a whiff of rain in the air.
There were some good reports. It's coming. We were limit 80 Rand down. Monday, no rain came, so we went up. Yesterday, we were up, and today again, we were up. But all of a sudden, around midday, market said, hang on, should we really be another 120 Rand up? And we actually ended up about 100 Rand up. So again, the market nervous. You can see it doesn't really know. So what's the big game changer? You know, is the rand going to strengthen significantly? You're going to take a guess at that.
There are a couple of things. I'd rather guess on the rain than the rand. There's some sort of scientific process in determining whether it'll rain or not. For the rand, there's no science.
So I think again it is that faith component, and if the rain comes through, we'll get hectares, but will we get a 10 billion ton crop versus, I think a lot of the market are factoring, if we can get 8 million tons, we'll pull through.
Yeah.
We won't see these high prices. Naturally, the market will come back off that. But we're fortunate globally, again, corn stock levels, maize, yellow maize stock levels are at a good level. So there's no shortage, because imagine where we'd be sitting if there was a global shortage on corn.
No, but then you start talking about issues of famine, and you start talking, I mean, the price of food is one thing, but if there's a shortage of food, that's when you have a real crisis on your hands, don't you?
Globally, particularly globally. So we're fortunate. I think the crop going in South America, Argentina and Brazil, they seem to be getting reasonable rains, which is also...
But El Nino should be affecting them as well, shouldn't it? But it's not.
It's not as bad as we thought.
But if it's not affecting them, then there is hope, therefore, using farmer logic,
that the rain's going to move across.
That the rain will come. There could be some kind of change in weather patterns. You can tell that I grew up on a farm looking for clouds in the sky, can't you? But I mean, it is this everlasting hope that things. So the maize, that's the maize market. What about wheat futures? What about the other grains? Because the Western Cape had what they call a green drought, just enough rain to keep the grass green, but not enough to actually penetrate the subsoil.
So wheat market, because we're net importers of wheat, we're going to be tracking their global wheat price. And yes, we've moved up to 4,500 Rand a ton from around 4,000 Rand level. Unfortunately, we didn't really get to reflect the true disaster in parts of the Western Cape. Why again? Because we're importing a lot of products. So what are those global import markets pricing at? And that's where we're going to trade at. Where there's been a big influence is local price of sunflower seed. We're at over 7,000 Rand a ton. And you haven't seen that. You know, if you go back 7, 8 years, we haven't really seen those kind of highs. Again, that might change if we do get rain now, because remember the farmer starts to switch from maize to sunflowers, a lot shorter crop, and then hopefully we'll get a bigger sunflower seed crop. So that, but at the moment, clearly the market is nervous around sunflower seed as well.
But all of these things play into staple foods, and all of these things, sunflowers into sunflower oil, for example, which is an absolute basic. The wheat into bread, and to practically everything else that appears on the processed food shelves, and then onto a more basic level, white and yellow maize.
Yeah. You've got soybeans, which we've now moved to over 1 million tons of production. Will we get to that? Well, again, it's going to be dependent on the rain. Soybean price globally has been a bit more nervous, has been actually pushed down. Why? Because it changes in Argentina. New president reducing the taxes, export taxes of soybeans, corn and everything else. So all of a sudden Argentina is a cheaper supplier of commodity, which is certainly helping us. not necessarily helping the farmer, but clearly the farmer will get a higher price if he's got a crop. But for the consumer out there, with Argentina helping to reduce taxes, they make it a cheaper source of supply.
Bottom line is, we've all got to get Simon Gett to tell a better story, really, because it is all dependent entirely right now on the weather, and whether or not we do get that decent rain coming through in December. January becomes too late.
Yeah. Well, look, I think even, again, it keeps everyone humble. As you said, the farmer is out there praying a hell of a lot, but that follow-up rains for January, February, yes, because we plant late, it's still critical. So even if we get our rains, we get the crop in, we know that for the next 4 months, we need to be fully conscious out there. Don't complain when you go through a rainstorm, and just hope that it's falling in an area where we can collect the water and at least irrigate from there.
No, exactly right. I mean, for people who are playing futures markets, I mean, there are farmers who hedge their bets in the futures market, and there are also ordinary investors who sit on their laptops late at night trying to conjure up what the future of commodity prices will do. Much activity?
Significant. It's again volatile.
You love
times.
a bit of a crisis, don't you?
You can see the shine in my eyes.
Exactly. You don't care about the droughts. You just want volume.
No, that's not quite right. I think we need to look at the sustainability of the markets. But I think we've been fortunate with the uncertainty. There's a lot of movement, and particularly if there's intraday movement. So as I said today, at one stage we're 120 rand up, and the market says, "Hang on, are we not overreacting?" And therefore would start to sell that market down again. But so we've been fortunate. What does help us is with the additional volume, where a year and a half ago we used to do 10,000 contracts a day. Now we're doing 15,000. It is so much easier now to attract international players to say, okay, look at South Africa. This is not a small grain market anymore. We can actually start to participate as well. But again, the important thing is bring it back to reality. You don't only want speculators. You want the balance between hedgers and speculators. And therefore, again, even on white maize, there's position limits. So if you've got one segment of the market nervous to say, hang on, this has all been driven by speculators, bear in mind the JSE has strict rules around how the size of position that these players can have, but they add liquidity to the market. So, if there's farmers out there who say today was a good hedge because I believe I'm going to plant a crop and I still want to lock in a price of 3,700 Rand a tonne for July next year, they could have done it. There was good liquidity.
There, good liquidity. If we could just get the liquidity coming from the clouds, that would be nice indeed. Chris Sturgess, who's head of the JSE Commodity Derivatives division, celebrating a 50% increase in the number of contracts that are being traded on a daily basis. Shrewd investors will make money during tough times, and tough times they are indeed. Till next time on The Money Makers, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.